Thank you so much, Gorka. I think that's something that's very, very close to all of our hearts. If we could connect all of these things, how can we increase the volume of fantastic projects that we have here? I'm not going to be so selfish as to ask you all questions, because I can do that later. We don't have a huge amount of time left, so I'm going to open it up to the floor now for some questions. I would also encourage you all to be slightly more provocative. I was hoping that they wouldn't all agree so much that what we just need is a decent infrastructure and good systems of learning and exchange. So if any of you have anything you particularly disagree with, please, or just a question is fine. Please raise your hand. I'd ask you all to introduce yourselves just briefly at the beginning and then ask your question. Let us know who it's for, if it's for someone in particular.
Sure.
Thanks.
Hello. Hi, my name is Nikhil Mandrekar. I'm actually an intern at the OECD in Paris, and part of my work is research on national innovation policies, particularly with respect to India. The question I have is, and before that, I just want to say I really admire your work and your passion and vision for India. The question I have is sort of a practical question, I think. In terms of inclusive innovation, how do you, what do you think will happen in terms of financing this? When you consider that in India right now, about 75% of the R&D takes place in public institutions, how do you plan to attract private money here when the social returns are probably higher than the economic returns? Thanks.
Thank you.
We have just launched $1 billion fund just for inclusive innovations. It will be a venture fund run on commercial ground. Government is putting in 100 million. 100 million is coming from local couple of insurance companies, of which we have already sort of enough to start the fund. It will not have 20% IRR that regular venture fund would expect. It will have 10-12% IRR. And the fund will be launched in early part of next year. It took about 9 to 10 months to structure the fund with trust and everything. But that's all behind us. It will be a commercial fund. Initially kick-started by the government, 100 million equity.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? There's one over here. Do we have a microphone?
Hello, my name is Oliver Diehl. I'm representing the German Science Ministry on sustainable development research. And my question also goes to Mr. Piroda. I was taking note of you saying we are strongly committed to growth. And we're planning for the next 20 years a growth rate of 8 to 10%. I was really shocked about it, because if we talk about 1.2 million Indians growing at that rate, I thought, how are we going to make this? Okay. The next sentence was you saying, well, but we have to have an Indian growth. It must be an Indian way of growing. And please tell me what that could be.
Sure, be delighted. We have grown in the last 7 years at over 8%. A lot of that growth is not based on export. That's what I mean by Indian, because the internal market is so very large that our focus is more on meeting demands of the internal market. That doesn't mean we don't have export business. We do $80 billion worth of software export a year. We export cars. We have pharmaceutical industry, which is big. Auto parts is equally big. But the difference between what we are planning to do versus, let's say, China, is not have too much export-based growth. And we estimate this growth to continue based on internal demand. Time will tell. Yeah. There are all kinds of issues. There is a green lobby in India also. So don't worry about it. They'll make sure, okay, there are enough You know, India has all kinds of lobbies and issues. So, you know, there'll be green lobby somewhere waking up. So
Hope that's
relax,
comforting.
it'll get done.
Okay, let's take a couple of questions this time. We've got one here, one over here, and one at the back. Just
Hi.
introduce yourself
Yeah,
briefly.
my name is Alice Katzi. I work for iPropeller. We're a consultancy on social business innovation. But I had a question for, well, actually it was more of an answer to Will Hutton about your, it's a research, I wanted to point out a research on social entrepreneurship and social innovation called SELUSI, S-E-L-U-S-I. And if you don't know it, you should. It's a big academia with LSE, Stockholm, and then some others. And in that, they talk a lot about how can we link social entrepreneurship and social innovation together. So you should have a look for all of your research. Thanks.
Great. I should say we'll also take answers from the audience as well. There was one at the back here.
Hello, I'm Peter Doyle. We heard yesterday Eric Schmidt from Google saying that a smart problem is a problem that involves anyone in its solution. And I was wondering whether the panel thinks that this makes Google a social innovator, or what it would take to make the work of Google work for social innovation.
Thank you, Peter. Agnes had one here at the front.
Thank you. I'm going to be a little bit sort of provocative. It's about, I think maybe the question has been asked in one of the other forums here, but it's about innovation and tradition. When we hear you, it seems that, everything that's new is good. And we've really got to suppress everything that existed. If I take sort of dance, for instance, the dancing, dancing is an art. In the 80s, 90s, it seems that, all the people who wanted to do something new had to really sort of kill off all the sort of old classical dancing and sort of go into, that's the case of Béjart and Nureyev and others. And now we see a much richer sort of contemporary dancing with people like Akram Khan, or who are really sort of going, or Sharkawi as well, who are going deep into the traditions and their roots and are sort of mixing it up with very new and contemporary elements, sort of looking for a lot of freedom, which was not in their tradition. But so this is this sort of mixture between tradition and innovation, which I would like to sort of ask members of the panel to see how can they combine it.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it to the panel. Christian picked up his microphone very eagerly, so...
Well, first of all, of course, this room knows very well, innovation is not about something that is new. Innovation is about something that is new and valuable to someone. And so the reason we focus so much on the new, of course, is because of the value of it, not because it's new in itself. But that's a risk, a fallacy we often fall in. And of course, if you're happy with the status quo as it is today, why care about innovation? But a lot of people today are not happy with the status quo, and that's, of course, why we need to explore the new. I think there's a long, long, long time before governments are so good at discovering the new and implementing new solutions that are valuable before we get tired of it. I don't think the challenge of government is a challenge of innovation. The challenge of government is a challenge of tradition. That being said, everything new we do enters into a context, and that is the big challenge, that what we do is not in a blank slate. It's not, we're already doing things, and we have to respect for that, and we also have to respect for what worked in the past that may be reinvented or combined with something new. Then I want to just very briefly answer the question about Google, because yesterday when I heard Mr. Schmidt speak, he said, we need to invest in more engineers, we need to invest in STEMs, which is a short for science, technology, engineering, and math. And that worries me quite a lot, because if that is true, then Google will never be a real, true social innovator. Because social innovation is about people. It's also about the human sciences. It's about design. It's about, it could be about literature. It could be about understanding human beings. So that, I think, will be a huge challenge for Google if they want to out-engineer China, or for that matter, India. That's not going to happen. The big innovation opportunity for Europe and for America is to remember that we're innovating for people. That is the challenge. And before Google realizes that, I don't think there'll be a social innovator.
Thanks, Christian.
My answer to the Google question will be that Google has done very good things that have impact positively the use of that to a lot of people, the way we live. So those certain elements are definitely social innovations for me. But that doesn't mean that everything that Google does is social innovation, because there will be a lot of things that probably, we don't agree with or we don't like. But that is the way it is. And I think it's important to respect those different dimensions, because otherwise there is a risk to put a label on the good and the bad companies, the good and the bad people, and then it's only us, the ones that are real social innovators. The rest are, being taken by the market. So we are pretty flexible, and that's why sometimes we have a lot of problem with the social innovation community, because when they see the city car project, for example, they will say, what is the social innovation in that project? Because if you don't look at the whole vision, you only see a car. You don't see what is behind. And in regards with Agnes' question, that's a crucial point as well for us. In regards with the car project, for example, we think the only way we are going to succeed is if we connect that project with the Basque culture. That has initially nothing to do, because it's a project coming from MIT, etc. But we have involved the way that the Basque companies have been working for a long time, the tradition of cooperative work, the tradition of manufacturing, and then how a small nation projects itself to the world. So if this project connects with the identity of the past, that is when it's going to be successful. If this project becomes another car project, it will never succeed. It will be about the values that this project is transmitting. Why people want to use this car. Sometimes we use the example of the Prius. Prius, Toyota has succeeded not because the car is a good car. It's actually not a very good car, and it's not particularly nice. But a lot of people will be driving it because they feel they want to associate themselves of the values of that car. And in the future, a lot of the products of the services that we are going to be using are those who project the values that we want to transmit. And that's, I totally agree with Christian, and so that Europe has a very powerful position to play on that discussion. And that's why social innovation for me is not just a small part of the agenda of the convention, because it's actually the only thing that the rest of the world doesn't have in such a sophisticated and deep way. So if we could actually build on that and connect with the past of Europe and the integration of Europe, then we were going to be doing something that nobody else in the world is doing.
Thanks, Gulke. Sam has one comment on this, and then we'll have one more round of questions.
My reading of Google was a little different. My reading was, how do you use connectivity to do things differently? We all know that information brings about openness, accessibility, connectivity, networking, democratization, decentralization. So how do you use all of these ideas to do things differently? Take, for example, education. Today, education is very expensive because teacher is supposed to create content and deliver content. I don't need teacher to create content anymore, in a sense. Nor do I need teacher to deliver content. What do I need teacher for? I think that's the message of connectivity. Internet connectivity is changing everything we do. How do we get birth certificate? How do we get land record? How do we apply for admission in school? How do we teach? How do we get health services? Message was, connectivity is changing the world we live in. Recognize it, use it, innovate.
Thank you. Will's going to say one sentence.
That's why I made the point about social and public innovation. Google can be a very effective social innovator, but only if it were to embrace measures of public accountability could it extend to being a public innovator. And that is very, very difficult for a company like Google to do. So that's why this distinction between social and public is enormously important, I think. And thank you for telling me that there's an answer. You must give me your card and I will look for it.
Okay, let's just take one more round of questions. We have one here. One over here, was there? Yep. Oh, you've got it. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Anis Beda from Hub Brussels. My question is for Mr. Idoyaga. We've seen many great initiatives coming from the public sector in the Basque countries, universities and reflection groups. Could you please tell us about the impact of these initiatives on the private sector and on the ecosystem of the Basque countries? Are there natural initiatives coming from the private sector following the path of the public sector? Thanks. And is it sustainable financially?
Yeah. Hang on a minute, Gorka. I'm just going to take the other two for time's sake. There's one here.
Thank you. I'm Christian Denif. I'm a consultant in knowledge and innovation. And honestly, most of my practice is not around social innovation. It's more about product and service and business models and other types of innovation. But it could be. One thing that strikes me is that the four of you presented a local regional perspective. Now, towards the end of the discussion, Gorka also mentioned rooting things into the local culture. And I'm just wondering, how well does social innovation travel? I mean, are some of the things that you mentioned, Gorka, about caring for the elder and dying people, I mean, it sounds like this could be adopted everywhere, and at the same time it sounds like this may be rooted in your culture and may not be adopted elsewhere. I mean, how does social innovation travel?
Okay, so one more question. No? Okay, good. Absolutely. Very short answers, please, everybody. Gorka, would you like to respond?
Very briefly. Just say, in the Basque area had, like 30 years ago, 25% of unemployment, really big crisis, heavy industry like the Malmo example, north of England, most very similar areas. And now we are struggling with the crisis like everywhere. But thanks to this kind of initiatives, public-private partnership, the Mondragon Corporation, a lot of individual projects, today unemployment is about 10%. Well, it's still very high, but is less than half of the Spanish employment rate. And for me, it is clear that it's a direct connection between the culture and the initiatives taken on this field and how to connect the social dimension with the private sector, what has made a difference. And sometimes for us it's difficult to explain how companies work, because it is our tradition to work on public and private partnership. So it's the case of Mondragon is a very good example, but I don't have the time to explain that. But I think there is something very interesting there for the whole discussion we are having in Europe. We have a lot of problems, of course, and we cannot teach anybody else anything else. But I think there is a conversation about the model and how are we going to get out of this crisis that has to do with that decision. And it is something very powerful. Just to, for example, I didn't mention before, the CAR project, which is a global project, it has a name that it sounds like Japanese, but it's Basque language. That means from the city. And we wanted to give that global project a name of a very local language that is a very, because it's projecting that connection between the social, the global, and the technology. And how we transfer that is difficult. But if you design from the beginning to make it global, that is where it makes a difference. The City Care project was designed from the beginning to be global. The palliative care project is being designed because it's the same. We all have the same challenge: how to take care of people dying. So it's about the first step of the design. How can we make it scalable? If we don't do it like that, then it's much difficult later.
Before we go on, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask our panelists to answer in one sentence an answer to your question, which is something that affects us all. That's particularly interesting for my work and for everyone here. Does social innovation travel? So as you do your concluding comments, before you do them, in fact, I'd just like to thank you all for being here today and for sharing your stories and your ideas with all of us. And thank you to all of the audience as well for listening. So before we do a round of applause, final comments. Does social innovation travel? Gorka, you can have one half sentence more.
I think it will travel in a foldable car.
It will travel in an affordable car. Thank you, Gorka. Christian.
So first of all, excellent question. And of course, social innovation can travel. I think I agree very much with Gorka that it's about the design principles. I mean, Google is fantastic, of course it is. And one reason it's fantastic is it's a platform that is adaptable to the context, the culture, the language. The advertisements in Google search in my country are in my language, in my context. And that's how we have to think about social innovations as well. To design strategically and explicitly the systems and the platforms that are then adaptable to local context. And there is a growing community of innovators across public and the private and the social sector that are actually beginning to realize that. But this is early days. But it's about designing the right systems.
Thanks, Christian. Sam?
Yes.
Great. Will?
The heart of open innovation and the ecosystem approach is precisely because innovation travels. Openness is about receptiveness to others' ideas. The whole idea of a porous open ecosystem is that it is trying to borrow, reinvent itself, move on, copy, be informed by. So it's yes.
Thank you so much. Oh, I don't need that too. Thank you so much to all of you, and thank you to all of you too.